What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra, your Green Bay Packers podcast that is a proud partner of the Euroset Podcast Network and the Blue Wire family. As always, I'm your host, Numac, coming to you with my trusty co-host, apparently riding the wave, Jordan Tresky. Jordan, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well, doing well. The true GSPN After Dark. That is a plug.
It is.
Get it?
It do be a
I'm
plug.
holding both blue and red pens.
What
Just
is
realized
what
that.
is that a plug for, Jordan?
That is a plug for our premium subscription. You get an additional pod on top of the GSPN pods that you obviously subscribe to if you're listening to this,
Obviously.
right? Obviously, you probably are a big fan of all of our work. You like the Bucks, you like the Packers, you like the Brewers. It doesn't have to be in that order, but we will accept it. Okay. And then you get make time for this where pop culture, your movies, your take, and then on top of that, we're giving you another podcast to listen to. It's about literally whatever we want it to be. And we hope it can be entertaining. We've done two. Numic, I don't
Numic.
know why, Numic, that's a new one. Let's add that to the list. Numac and I actually did episode two. It was not the Talk About the Tundra, it was us two. We were talking about Wisconsin sports legends coming back, a very relevant topic to the Packers, obviously, in light of Craig Counsell coming to Milwaukee and getting his ass kicked because the Cubs lost 3 out of 4 games to the Brewers. So, yeah, that's just a little plug, and we're gonna keep plugging away because that's what we do.
The all the podcasts you listen to already on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to podcasts, they're not going anywhere. But if you do subscribe, you'll get all of the pods on the GSPN network. That's redundant, but you get my point. With no ads. So if you are a person who hates ads, go subscribe. If you're a person who likes extra content, go subscribe. And if you just like supporting us, go subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. We just got this off the ground 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks
Yes.
ago, and it's been a lot of fun thus far. A couple of GSP After Darks, like Jordan had said, a couple of Jeopardy episodes already in the books, some more trivia in the hopper as we try and figure out just what all this extra content for you guys will be. So go over, check it out, even if you don't subscribe. Oh, and all of our written pieces are there now too. So
Yes.
uh, yeah, go check it out. We'd appreciate it. With that being said, let's hop into the Packers news. Packers started OTAs or other team activities last week. Getting back to it, had a pretty good attendance record for all of that. Um, and then it was announced this week, before we get into all the news coming from OTAs, that the NFLPA is looking to change how OTAs, I guess, operate slash when they are. So not because of, but in light of the discussion of the NFL going to an 18 game schedule and extending the season a bit, the NFLPA has thought about floating a proposal to the NFL to change when OTAs happen from basically being in the middle of May through the beginning of June to then pushing all of that to basically middle of June. And they'd have the same amount of OT activities, but then all of that would roll right into training camp. So basically, light workouts, no pads, soft contact for 6 weeks rolled right into then the beginning of training camp, which typically starts the end of July for 30 of the 32 teams. The other two playing in the Hall of Fame game start a couple weeks earlier. But um, I think it's a good idea. Like from a player's perspective, they actually get a longer break than they would if they didn't have, or if they continue operating as it is now. Especially with going to that 18 game schedule, they'd probably be a little bit annoyed, given that I think Roger Goodell's, I think this was reported a couple weeks ago. It didn't make a lot of news, but I think it was reported that um, Roger Goodell wants to have the Super Bowl be hosted a week later because the Monday after the Super Bowl is usually played, I believe, is President's Day, which would be a national holiday. Not everybody gets it off, obviously, but it would be the holiday and would be a pseudo resolution to what a lot of fans have already been asking for as a joke for like 15, 20 years for the Super Bowl the day after to be a holiday, so people don't have to go to work. But Yeah, I think it's a good idea. It would be an interesting thing to like just have what would in essence be 2 straight months or 2.5 straight months of like a training camp because it would be in essence the same thing in my mind. But I think for the players it makes a whole lot of sense.
Feels more sustained. I think it is a way, not just from a player's perspective, which I am fully on board with. I think it just gets with interest. Yeah, I mean, it is really hard to keep. We are doing a Packers podcast. It is hard to keep track of the days when they are in Green Bay and when they're not. Yeah, I mean, like it
Totally, totally.
to me, I think it would just sustain interest in the season that is coming, even as we talk about the most popular sport in the United States of America. So I think not just from looking out for the safety of the players and just their overall workload, have a continuous summer or off season probably be helpful before you get together for organized team activities. Um, but I just think from an interest standpoint, it makes just a lot more sense than hey, you're gonna be in for this week, you're gonna pop out, pop back in, pop out. Like it just, I don't know. I never really understood why it's the way it is. But we're also talking about the NFL that is resistant to change, and I I don't know what the owners would think of it if they had any real thought on it. Yeah, I mean, so
Yeah, I
I guess
think.
I guess it's worth monitoring in that sense.
hmm
But
I think if they get their way with the 18 game schedule versus not having like if they get an extra game of revenue, I think they wouldn't
they'll
they
view
wouldn't
it as
be.
a concession.
Yeah, that's kind of how Bleacher Report was reporting it too, and the guys who were reporting on it over there would that be like that's a perfectly fine concession if they because like it's not like they're really losing anything. I don't really see the detriment of moving it back to the
Yeah,
middle of June. They're just having, like I said, 2.5 straight months of the guys in Green Bay or in their city where they're playing, doing training camp and doing OTAs. Like it gives them what 5 months off ish from if you're not in the playoffs. It gives you like 6.5 or 5.5 months if you're in the playoffs. 4.5 months if you make the Super Bowl. It'd be middle of February to middle of June, so 4-ish months. But I think that's
hmm
better than the Chiefs players having to come back at the beginning of May, frankly, and that's only
yes,
3 months. So say what you want about it. I think it's a good idea, but we'll see how it progresses. I think one of the other like interesting what's the word angles at this proposal is just like how it affects rookies. Like teams are getting a
yeah,
good look at rookies right away, like a month after they drafted them, and so they can use these OTAs as things to work on before training camp and give them time to actually like look over and work on an individual practice performance basis rather than practice with the team kind of thing. So I don't think that's as big of a sticking point as it could be. Like I don't think that's a big sticking point. I just think it's something interesting to talk about. That like, okay, you see a rookie quarterback making mistakes in OTAs, you can go to them between the end of OTAs and the beginning of training camp and say like, this is what you should be working on between now and training camp, so you're ready for training
yeah,
camp. As opposed to coming into OTAs in the middle of June and being like, all right, here's to the Wolves. Like this is from now until the beginning of the season. You're on the clock and won't really have time to adjust outside of camp.
yeah.
So that being said, do you want to get into the Packers news?
Let's do it.
So as I mentioned up top, Packers had pretty good attendance for their OTAs, something that I shouldn't be getting excited about, but am just because it seemingly made a difference in my brain this year to see. I think they have what a 90 man roster. Like they had like 98% attendance. Almost everybody was there. If even if they weren't participating or practicing, they were there rehabilitating. One of the big names that was there was Jaire Alexander, who has a $700,000 financial incentive to be there, but he did skip them last year. And I think after the debacle that was the end of last year with him almost flubbing the coin toss in Carolina and then getting suspended for a game, and just all the drama that was around Jaire. I think it is good to see him committed to being there for OTAs and just committed to being the leader that I think we all expect him to be.
Yes, that is the first and foremost thing on anything that we'll talk about with Jaire lead up to the season is putting the past behind him. This is year 7 for him, which is kind of nuts. Um, and obviously years 5 and 6, more so 6, were not great for a whole lot of
No, they weren't.
reasons.
Yeah, between the not personal, like outside of football reasons, but the attitude towards football, the attitude towards the team, injuries plagued his season 2 years ago, and last year
Yes.
a little bit. Like definitely a rough 2 years for him.
Hasn't been an easy ride since he signed the extension. Some of it has been his on him, and some of it has not been. But I think one reading comments of what he's been saying, in part, I think inspired by like defensive coaching staff, which you could read between the lines there a little bit.
Yeah, there's been a
Um,
lot of good comments on Jeff Hafley, and it kind of makes you wonder how the people felt about about Joe Barry, but we'll get to that a little bit later.
um, but definitely that has kind of re-energized things. I think just kind of turning the page and accepting what last year was has helped. So the fact that I think Packers just kind of stepped up and play a little hardball with him, whether it's organizationally suspending him. It was revealed earlier this week too that Jair got fined by LaFleur. Not we don't know how much for. We don't even know the reason why, but that was in Rob Domofsky's article on ESPN
Earlier in the season.
Thursday as recorded. Yeah, he got fined for a separate incident earlier in the season. We don't know why or what it was, but I'm
Hmm.
sure people will probably find out why. Um, yeah, just I think there's just a lot of I mean, we're gonna dwell on it because there's still a couple, three, 3-ish months till the start of the season.
Yeah,
But it is a collective reset for someone that is clearly talented, can be one of the most. I mean, he in Rob Dombrowski's article, he approached the reporter saying that he's one of the best. What was the line? It said something like, "Oh, one of the best corners coming into the room right now," or something like
yeah.
that.
The
So,
the best corner in the NFL has entered the chat or something like that.
yes, yes, he is not low on self confidence, and rightfully so,
Never
because
ever.
he can be the best NFL cornerback if everything breaks right. But I just think the attitude and just the focus being rejuvenated and recharged will help Jair moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you and I both and all of Packers fans hope that he does get back to that form because if he does, the Packers will be in a great place with him if they can stay healthy at that secondary between new additions Xavier McKinney, Jair getting back to form, seeing how Carrington Valentine progresses in his sophomore season, and then Eric Stokes, like we'll talk about him a little bit later too. If he can stay healthy, like there isn't a lack of talent out there. It's just a lack of, I guess, last year is a lack of mentality and a lack of health, but we'll see. Like it'll be good to see a locked in Jair, especially if he's being motivated as much as he is, um, as much as he is by Jeff Hafley. Um,
Yes, some of the other comments he was saying is that he didn't really care as whether he's named defensive captain or not, which that was obviously a big sticking point under the previous regime.
what was that like
And
3 years
really,
ago? He had an issue with that. 3 4 years ago.
I want to say that was the 22 season. I think that was our first year covering the Packers, but I could be wrong if it had been a problem before then.
Hmm.
It was definitely that year because he was the captain the year before, and then they switched. Um, so that is significant in its own right, and again, kind of fills in the lines of why he's more willing to accept not being a captain this year if
Right.
it means they re-engaged with the people above him and who are in power and
Mm-hmm.
want the best out of him. Um,
For what it's worth, Jaire talked, or this is from Matt Schneeben. Jaire talking to media yesterday, so that'd be Wednesday. Um, this is from Matt. Jaire Alexander explains how defensive and strength staff changes, quote, definitely have improved his happiness and connections to the team. On the prior staff in that regard, quote, I wouldn't say it was missing, but it wasn't as easy as it is with the new staff. They've been great. Like, there's been a couple of quotes over the past days and in the last week where it's been like kind of like raise your eyebrows, turn your head at how
yeah,
candid some of these guys are being about the former strength and conditioning staff as well as just Joe Barry.
yeah. I think I don't know. That to me right there, it's going to obviously um change. Everything's peachy. Everybody's in the best shape of their life. Everybody's doing better. Injuries are, it. This is the time of year that we're in. But for right now, the good vibes of the new people in charge and unlocking obviously this defense is the biggest thing moving forward for this Packers team. And it's good to see things people be on the same page.
Yeah, and hopefully that transfers all to training camp too and into the season because that's obviously where this matters, right?
Yeah, exactly.
um, do you have anything else on Jair? Do you want to read these quotes?
Um, yeah, let's read. I'll read this one.
Yeah.
I thought this is actually really interesting. Uh, he said, "I think the biggest thing is just understanding that although I'm on an island all the time and all day, it's the culmination of everybody being around and the culmination of the chemistry that we're building now that's going to matter later on in the season." Alexander said, "You'll see it." Which, yeah, there you go. Like it that's that's what we want to hear.
Yeah, I think it's really talking about process over like early season results kind of thing.
Yes.
And like it's all working towards something that they did it in the last like the last 2 years pretty much exemplified what I think he's saying here where the defense was kind of suspect early on in the season, but as they got better or as the season went on they got a lot better and they got into form and you just had to trust it all along the way. Now with a new regime and a new hopefully more aggressive defense, I think that'll just be ramped up tenfold, frankly.
Yeah.
So
Memory is failing me right now. Did Jair play against the 49ers in the playoffs? Because he was hurt.
I can look, but I don't think he did. For some reason, I don't remember him playing.
That is my recollection as well, but I cannot remember if that actually was because there's obviously a lot of people that were hurt that we were.
Right. Postseason. He
He did play.
he did play.
Okay.
4 tackles. Uh, otherwise, no stats to uh to say or to note for. Excuse me. It doesn't tell me the advanced stats for those because of reasons. But actually, let me see if I can pull up the last one to see if he had any targets. He was targeted 5 times, 4 completions at him for 33 total yards. So, not a whole lot of activity his way, but he did play. Should we go from one side of the cornerback room to the other? Talk about Eric Stokes a little bit.
Yeah. Yes. Let's do it.
So, Eric Stokes coming into his 5th year. Yes, 4th year because
What?
they didn't pick up his 5th year this year.
Yep.
So I always get that backwards. It always seems weird to me. Anywho's will be coming into his 4th year, still trying to get over the injury bug after he missed most of the season last year, and obviously went down with his ankle injury a season and a half ago in Detroit. Um, but obviously battling the hamstrings. He and Christian Watson, who we'll talk about in a little bit, went down to the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Health this offseason. His trip revealed a similar disparity that as Watson had, with a lack of strength in his foot since suffering his Lisfranc injury in the 2022 season. So his foot was not strong enough to support the rest of his leg, which caused him hamstring injuries for compensating for the lack of strength in his foot, which obviously caused him problems last year. Um, he said that not only does he feel stronger than he did last year, but he feels faster. For the frame of reference, coming out of the 2021 draft, Stokes ran a 4.25 40. So, quick quote from Matt LaFleur. Like I shouldn't say quick; it's quite long. I think he's quote. I think he's as good as I've ever seen him. LaFleur said, "quote both mentally and on the field. I want to temper the expectations with that, but I do really mean that. He's out there competing each and every day. He looks healthy. He's doing a great job of challenging our wide receivers. He's always great in phase, and I think you see that personality is back. I mean, that's tough on players when you're going through an off season, not really having an opportunity to build upon their bodies, and you're just focused on rehabbing and getting healthy." So then Stokes said, "quote I haven't had this much fun since my rookie year," which is good to see because like it has been a taxing 2 years for Eric Stokes. I know in the past we've had opinions on Eric Stokes that aren't so flowery, given his play and his just battling injuries, and I don't think those opinions aren't justified. But at the end of the day, like I think, I mean, we've fallen victim to it too. I know I do all the time. It's hard to get your brain and to get your mind away from the fact that sometimes these injuries take more than a year to recover and to get these guys back to extreme peak of their athletic ability.
Yeah.
I think of guys like um, I want to say Michael Thomas before he had his first injury before like the slew of the other ones. He had that huge season coming out from New Orleans. There's a bunch of other like specialist guys too that whenever they get like a big injury, they do okay their year back, but then they really get back to form the 2 years after the injury. And so maybe that's the case with Eric Stokes, and he was just trying to rush back last year. But if he can get back to what he was projected to be coming out of his sophomore year, then, or I'm sorry, coming out of his fresh or his rookie year, I think that'd be a good place for the Packers cornerback room to be.
That would be very reassuring,
Yeah.
certainly. Um, One, not even just this is essentially going to be a prove a year in terms of
Yep.
it's not just about Green Bay, it's about getting a deal come free agency, couple 9 months from this time next year. So Eric Stokes clearly is playing for his NFL future. I'm very happy to see that he's having as much fun, or if not more fun, since his rookie year, because as you mentioned, it's been pretty taxing. It's been hellish. 110 snaps last year, 4 snaps on special teams, including one that re-aggravated his injury his this whole cycle.
I remember we talked about that because it was so maddening that they'd put him on special teams to run full bore with his injury rather than put him in coverage and use him that way.
Yeah, it was just I don't know, it's just weird. And I think your point about like so yeah, this guy's coming back. Everything's gonna be fine. It's like it does not. Not everybody works the same way. Not every injury responds the same way, or
Right.
not injury, but recovery. Because especially in the middle of the season when these guys just want to play, they will do anything by any means necessary to get back on the field. That's not necessarily the greatest judgment of whether you're doing the right thing or not for your body.
Oh, absolutely.
So, so for him, and we'll get into this with the next player we'll cover too, but it the compounding of it starts with your foot strength based on the injury that you suffered the year before. Then you're trying to come back to it. You're even if you're not feeling right, you're probably being like, yeah, I can still play. You know what I mean? Like, what are you willing to kind of suffer through just in order to say, no, I'm still playing though.
Right.
It's it. the pain tolerance for any athlete, much less an NFL player that certainly plays with pain at all times, is just insane.
Right.
So I think for him, one, it just starts with getting back on the field and playing consistently. And then, obviously we'll probably have thoughts on how he plays this year when the time comes, but it is just, you know, he saw his sophomore year get cut short by injury, and then last year was in lost season with in all caps. I mean, it just he was not a factor at all. So I'm looking forward to year four for Eric Stokes because I just think one, when healthy, he can be a productive player. Two, I think with this run and hit mantra that has kept being talked about in Green Bay under Jeff Halfley, the guy can certainly run and he can certainly hit when he has a lot of ferocity coming his way. So I'm very excited to see him hopefully play a fully healthy season this year.
Playing off of that love of running and tackling that you just touched on. Again, Matt Schneeman reporting that this was again yesterday on Wednesday. Eric Stokes, quote, "Ooh, I love Halfley. He just want you to go out there and have fun and just play 110 miles per hour. And that's what I love about Halfley. He always say, quote, this is again quotes inside quotes. Good, great stuff for audio podcasts. I'm gonna go ahead and take the bullet. You just go out there and just have fun and you just play. End quote. End quote. For funsies. um, I think that's a great mantra for Halfley to have. Like, I think the biggest thing about, I guess the biggest thing for, I guess even going back to like Dom Capers and Mike Pettin and Joe Barry is just they were so worried about getting beat over the top that they would just let everything go over the middle and not play with a whole lot of intensity. They'd play more safe than they'd play more rather than playing more aggressive.
Conservative.
Right. And so if they can play aggressive and really just go for the ball and go for tackling guys, I think it just leads to more confident guys and doing what they're doing versus having to think about their coverage and think about their assignment and worrying about the big play that they could let up. Because
Yeah.
like obviously, yeah, giving up a 70-yard touchdown isn't going to be a good thing. But I think the big difference now is that, and no disrespect to these guys, but you don't have Rudy Ford back there. You don't have Jonathan Owens back there. You don't have Darnell Savage back there. Darnell Savage obviously better than those other two guys, but you have an all not all pro, but you have a pretty good stud safety back there in Xavier McKinney that can make up for a lot of those mistakes that you might get burned on the side or one of the linebackers might get burned on in slot coverage or something like that. So I think that addition of Xavier McKinney really does go a long way in having this defense able to play downhill in the box and at the line because besides Jaire and if Stokes comes back healthy and Carrington Valentine, like you just have that weapon in Xavier McKinney back deep to cover up any big blemishes sometimes for those mistakes.
You can have the kind of security blanket, and you can also have the we're gonna bring the boom to you kind of
Mm-hmm.
mentality.
Right.
I think both of those things could be achieved. Can it be achieved with this Packers team? I mean, time is gonna tell with that, but um, certainly things are in the right place in terms of talent additions and fits and everything like that. Like I think both can be achieved rather than just kind of relying, as you mentioned, the kind of sit back but not too far back kind of thing. We will allow as much as we will allow, but then obviously allow more than you intended to.
Right. 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 Um. Yeah. So I guess here's to Eric Stokes being healthy. Here's to Eric Stokes having a good training camp. Like I wouldn't even be. I'd be pretty happy if he actually earned that number two corner spot back from Carrington Valentine because he doesn't deserve it in like that idea. But if he can get back there, then I think that is a big plus for the Packers secondary,
Yes.
without a doubt. Honestly,
Yeah.
Should we move on to the offense? A little Christian Watson talk.
Yes. And speaking of another individual that is looking to put his injury troubles behind him.
That's right. As we mentioned at the beginning of the Stokes segment, Christian Watson went to the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Health earlier this offseason to undergo testing for his issues with his hamstring. Um, he was testing for over 8 hours, and it was revealed that Watson had a muscle imbalance in his legs. He had a 20% muscle difference between his left and right legs, with the left being more deficient or being less having less muscle mass in his left leg. Now that number is down to 8 to 10%. He said his goal is to have that number to 6%. Quote from Christian Watson: "For me, it really was the asymmetry between the legs. It comes from a lot of things. Obviously, the issues I've had in the past with hamstrings, not fully recovering from those strength wise. I've been attacking the strength side of it, trying to get that symmetry back, and it's been huge for me. I feel really really good. I got to continue grinding at it." End quote. Um, as not a doctor, as just merely a fan and hearing these guys talk about it, yeah, that makes sense. If you're compensating running with one leg too much or one leg too little, it makes perfect sense that you would sustain an injury to either leg because of either issue. Either one's being worked out too much and being overstrained, or the other one is you're using your other leg in a way that which isn't natural to compensate for the lack of muscle there. And so
Yes.
you get out of form, you get out of rhythm, weird things happen, injuries happen. And so shout out the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Health because if they can make our guys not so injury prone and have this new strength and conditioning regime come in and actually work with guys to make sure they're coming back when they're supposed to. Like I think that's the biggest thing too is that like it's so tough for these guys to not be on the field that like you said with Stokes, like they'll do anything to get back. And like Watson said himself, he came back when his strength wasn't fully there, and that probably had something to do with it. But when there's only 17 games in a season, like missing one is very big. And
Yep.
missing a game could have you miss out on paychecks on the line, miss goals for your incentives, all these things, right? And so they come back too early, and it's often a long term detriment. So I am going to try and be better. Not that we have anything to do with this kind of thing, but like be better in understanding that if a guy doesn't come back soon enough, that's just an unfortunate happening because he's injured, with the hope that he is just healthier down the line.
It's hard. It's very hard because once you're in that season, we wait for God knows how long for every season to come around. Sometimes it's a longer wait than others, sometimes it's a shorter wait than others. But by and large, it's 8 months, give or take. But when you're in that 4 months, it goes by fast. And if we're feeling that, players will certainly feel that.
Oh, without a
Yeah, I
doubt.
mean, all they want to do is compete. And if you can't do that, and if it affects your professional future by sitting out games, even though you feel like you're ready to play, like that is the tough thing. Christian Watson, I think, is, I mean, there's a lot of Packers. I mean, I would say probably definitely the three Packers that we're talking about from OTAs have the biggest to prove. Um, Certainly their futures will be impacted by how this year goes. Um, but for Christian Watson, it's like these guys are really talented players. You know what I mean? Like Jaire Alexander is obviously the most proven of it. Christian Watson and Stokes are very similar in that they have really good rookie years,
Right.
even though injuries were more of a factor for Christian Watson in his rookie year too.
Mm-hmm.
But just last year was a disaster for Christian Watson and Stokes. It's just so it's so hard to like there's a lot of real skepticism that anybody could have about what Christian Watson will be as an NFL player because we're probably seeing a microcosm of how his career will unfold.
Right.
However, The guy had a 20% muscle imbalance and was still doing things that like are insane. Like when we're talking about raw like explosiveness and being able to track the ball, score touchdowns at will as he did in down the stretch in his rookie year. Um I don't I it's really we talk like it's the feast or famine thing or like the all or nothing. He embodies that more than any player that I can remember having, rooting for. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
If he's not on the field, he's not obviously he's not on the field. But when he's on the field, he's playing great
right,
outside of like 5 games.
right. I think it this Christian Watson in and of himself is actually I guess the of what Christian Watson can be and what people think about him varies from he's broken and he won't have any sort of impact on the season for or for on this team for years to come. He just won't be able to stay on
Yeah.
the field. To if healthy, he's one of the most dynamic receivers in football, which like
Well,
is a
here's a stat that Domofsky dropped in this article.
okay.
Only 13 receivers with at least 100 targets have a higher average of yards per catch than Watson, who has 15 yards per catch.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Like,
That's crazy.
yeah,
Also, just shows how reliant on the deep ball they are with him. But still,
is that
crazy.
is that since their rookie year? Like since
Yeah, since
yeah,
2022.
yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Like the man is fast. He has had a couple of good yard after catch plays. Particularly the one that comes to mind is the play in 2022 in Philadelphia, and Jordan Love threw at him, and he had just outran the entire defense on a
Yep.
slant for like 75 yards. So yeah, if he
That's
can,
those are chunk plays. That is chunk plays right there.
yeah,
That's what it is.
and so if he can be that guy that we saw in 2022, buddy, we're talking about an outstanding offense.
And that is Christian Watson again. I'm gonna look it up right now because we're talking about like his rookie year as being like this like all world rookie year. It was not.
No, it
But
wasn't.
the
But
the
he
stretch
had like
the stretch that he had
700 yards and like seven touchdowns.
41 so for his rookie year he had 41 catches on 66 targets, 611 yards, 7 touchdowns.
I was
Um
pretty close.
yeah, you were pretty close. 7 carries, 80 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns for what it's worth. But still,
That gets me to
like
700.
I'll give it to you. Actually, you're under ever so slightly. Doesn't matter. That is what we're talking about of like what this idealized Christian Watson, and that's still 8 games of like
Yeah,
pure, just, you know, doing again, scoring touchdowns at will.
yeah,
That is not sustainable. But the
no,
the level of productivity that he established at half of the year is pretty significant.
yeah.
I
I
I
don't think it's fair to extrapolate those numbers out to 16 or to 17 games, but 8 games in 2022 at 700 yards and 7 touchdowns or 9 touchdowns, 14 and 18, 1,400 yards and 18 touchdowns. That's a pretty darn good year. But sorry,
That's pretty crazy.
sorry to interrupt.
I think the ceiling as we get closer, we'll talk more about these in-depth conversations. But the ceiling of this Packers team and just the offense in general, like they figured it out without Watson, but they started to figure it out with Watson too. That Chiefs game where he got hurt was, I think he was even playing pretty well before he got hurt. Um, and obviously the Thanksgiving game too is pretty, set in stone. Yeah, the
The Thanksgiving
Kansas
game is
City
the one that
game he
stands
had
out.
seven. The Kansas City game he had 7 catches for on 9 targets, 71 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yep. I think did he get hurt on like a deep ball where he landed on his back, I
It
think.
was the carry.
Oh, and he went down in a heap on the sideline. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
left
yeah,
leg
yeah.
gave
Yep,
out.
yep. I remember that now.
But this is, yeah, he's just a field tilter, whatever you want to call him,
Hmm.
chunk play master, fat bastard. Get in my belly.
Sorry, Ty.
So that's not what?
It certainly is. Doesn't matter.
It's a term.
The
Anyway,
episode we might explicit regardless because of that.
gosh darn it. What?
You don't gotta do it anymore. You already said it. You can say damn
I
it.
know.
I won't drop an F bomb, but no.
Anyway,
Anyway,
I am very, I just want him healthy.
me too. I think everybody does.
If Christian Watson is healthy, I was about to say something very
Really?
off the cuff.
Were you about to dive into what we were talking about on our first episode of GSPN After Dark? About who wins the next
Yeah.
title with Wisconsin sports?
I don't know if they'll win, but I think they would go.
Interesting. It's almost like you could subscribe to the GSPN Substack and hear that whole conversation for yourself if you want to.
Correct.
But yeah, I'm with you. A Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks wide receiver room is stupid.
You also
Stupid
have
good.
not mentioned Romeo Dobbs or Bo Melton.
I know.
That is, I will be very intrigued to see what happens with the wide receiver room.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory because they didn't bring anybody back, or they didn't bring anybody in. Like significant,
Yes,
significant. It's like I to go into this discussion way earlier than we need to. It's Christian Watson, Octavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, Bo Melton, Malik Heath, and then
hmm that's it.
whoever they decide to pick up.
Maybe
Like
DeBose.
if they bring him back, yeah. But yeah, like seven's really all you need because then you also have Kraft and hold on, there we go, Musgrave and Sims.
Sims.
Like I think 9, 10, pick a finger to go down
Probably
is
nine.
plenty to run with for pass catchers. Not to mention they still have obviously Josh Jacobs and AJ Dillon and Marshawn Lloyd coming out of the backfield. Marshawn Lloyd not the greatest pass catcher, but Josh Jacobs is. That's me. That's my mea culpa for saying he wasn't a good pass catcher. By the way, um, back when they signed him. Regardless, I just don't think there's much of a competition there. Like outside of injuries
You don't
happening
think there's a competition within the? Wait,
to make the
are you talking
team,
about the wide
absolutely
receiver
not.
room?
Yes, the wide receiver
No,
room.
yeah, yeah. I think you're
Yeah,
right.
to make the team, absolutely
I'm
not.
just
They're gonna roll with their six, and that'll be that. That'll be like the least
I'm
interesting can't battle ever.
I'm more interested in the hierarchy
I don't think it
and
matters, frankly. Think about how many people caught touchdowns from Jordan Love last year, and how much they spread the ball around. I don't think it really matters. I think they'll do
yeah,
it a lot like they did towards the end of the year. This is way too early for this discussion. Um, where it's kind of like the hot hand. There were weeks where Jaden Reed didn't get like 6, 7
yeah,
targets. There were weeks where Romer Dobbs didn't get 4 or 5 targets. There were weeks where they didn't really involve Kraft and Musgrave. Like I think it's matchup dependent, and they kind of just play to their studs. And if say Tim Wicks is really tearing it up next, like early on next season, they'll keep going to him until it doesn't work, and they'll use him as a decoy for then Christian Watson and Jade Reed. Like I honestly don't think it's gonna be like a delineated wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. I think it's going to be a bunch of wide receiver twos, not in talent level, but in how they're utilized. Does that make sense? Like I don't think
yes,
it's
I
going to
agree.
be
I agree.
Rogers to Adams types of QB1 to wide receiver one.
No, and I agree with you. I think structurally, it's not going to be like that for the better because that is not how
Correct.
we we wrung out as much as we could with that kind of roster building.
Yep.
I'm more worried, intrigued,
Yeah.
fascinated by
Not worried.
how how it will play out. Because obviously injuries are going to be a factor. Hopefully not, but injuries just loom over
Oh
anything.
yeah,
So yeah, the combination that they were forced to settle on by the end of the last year found it, and they got to the playoffs. They beat the Cowboys. Should have been the Niners, but you know, I digress. Um, I'm just really curious about what this looks like going to start and then how it evolves. Because yeah, that is how they adapt is the biggest thing that the Packers have done the last 2 years, especially as this kind of rebuild has come into vogue.
yeah. I think the biggest thing to go with that is just Jordan Love's development, and
Yeah,
I'll keep it short because again, this conversation is happening way too early in the offseason and in the training camp timeline. But if they can trot out an offense with multiple reads for Jordan Love with their top three guys who are out there or with the package of guys that they're out there, then I think that gets pretty dangerous. Like if you can run plays for where you could have three guys open and you pick the guy that's most open or has the best matchup, who buddy watch out? Like between Christian Watson's speed, Dontavian Wicks' shiftiness and being able to get open with his feet, and Jaden Reed's combo of the both.
yeah.
Like that's a strong multi. I don't want to say, I guess, wide array of talents and ways of getting open from your receiving group. So if you have a quarterback that can read a defense to where the opening is for the offense, I'm all for it.
We have you mentioned well, you mentioned it, but like the overall pass catchers too.
Yeah,
Because oh boy, am I starting to get excited now?
I know, I know. A couple more
We went
things.
to Lambeau.
We did go to Lambeau. We went and did the tour. You, me, good friend Andrew Snyder, and friend of the pod, John, went and did the Lambeau tour. A lot of fun. A lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. It got the juices flowing, the Packer
Mm-hmm.
juices flowing.
We went down. We did not touch on. We did not step on the grass. We stood right next to it though.
Shout out Doug,
Shout out Doug, our
the
tour
best
guide.
tour guide. That was great.
He was
He's great.
he was pretty great. If you guys haven't, if you listeners haven't gone up to the Lambo tour, would recommend it. We did the Champions tour, which was like the middle option of like experience wise. We had a pretty good time. Hall of Fame, as cool as ever. Just a lot of cool stuff in there. Um, so yeah, go check it out. Not the show for the Lambeau Field or anything, but it's pretty cool.
But you need. This is our PSA that even if you have done these things before, I have done the
Yeah,
tour.
we both had done
I
the
have been
tour.
to
I
Hall
hadn't
of
done it in like 15 years, 20 years even.
Same. It is good to even just kind of like go back to that and the
Hmm.
things that they do for us fans. Yeah, I mean, not every team does this,
No, they
and
don't.
not every team, most importantly, does it as well as the Packers do.
Not every team has the history and like what's the word? The I guess breadth of history to be able to do
Yes.
something like that. Like I think that the thing I was most thankful for, as it is as weird as to be thankful for a tour you paid for, is that like when we started the pod, I told the story about how I grew up in the shadow of Lambeau Field, and like I had been going to games all my life. I've been to probably more games I can count on my hands and my feet, and just being around the Packers for so long sort of made me take that experience for granted. And doing the tour,
Yeah, you're too inside.
yeah, doing the tour kind of like reignited that fire in me as a fan. Is like, yeah, this is really fucking cool to experience as a to be a fan of this franchise. Like it's there was like butterflies when we at one point during the tour you go into the south expansion and stand up by the newest scoreboard on the south side of the end zone, and you look
Yeah,
over the entire stadium, and you look over Green Bay. You can see the Leo Frigo, and you can see quote unquote downtown and everything else. It's like, man, this is really cool. Like, it's it feels significant. It feels like the pomp and circumstance that the Packers have just really kind of puts forth, or really comes through during that tour. And like at one point, you're if you've driven in Green Bay, or I'm sure a lot of you people who are listening have, if you come in from Highway 43, coming from Milwaukee, going through Alwyn to Pier, you go over the Highway 172 bridge, you can see the the big G on the back of the scoreboard as you go over the bridge. Same thing when you go over Tower Drive or the Leo Frigo Bridge on the east side of Green Bay. You can see it from there. You can see it coming up through 41 once you go past Main Street into Pier by Wabi Lane. Like there's just a hey, that's Lambeau. Like I remember pointing to you and John and Andrew like, hey, look out the window. You can see Lambeau from here. And like that's like it's almost like it comes over the horizon and you're approaching
Yeah.
the mecca of football and you just get like that fuzzy feeling in your stomach. And that wasn't something I had, and I shouldn't say in a while, because I honestly do get that every time I go to Green Bay and I see it. I get like pretty excited that I get to see that. But getting to see the big G up close and getting to see some of the stuff behind the scenes that they do, some of the stories that they tell about Curry Lambeau and Vince Lombardi and Ron Wolf and Bob Harlan, like it was really cool. Like again, would recommend. I don't know why we need to do promos for the Packers Hall of Fame tour and their stadium tour, but you should go do it if you haven't.
It was also very cool. We got the Numac tour, of course.
Of course,
Uh,
I had to show you around
um,
my hometown
we won't.
specifically, Ashwaubenon, and also
There you go.
Green Bay.
But to me, obviously, everything Lambo related was very cool. And again, I would do it in a heartbeat again because it just is fascinating. There's nothing else like it, really. But seeing where the Packers played in their original stadium,
Yeah,
City Stadium, and you see it's Green Bay East, right?
yep.
Green Bay East
It's
football field.
now it's Green Bay East, but they had a new sign in front of it. I think it's like an arts institute now. I'm not sure if East still
Probably.
has classes like a high school, but they might do more arts based learning at East and let West and Preble take the actual academics.
Um,
But yes, it formerly or currently, I forget which. I'm not up to date on my Green Bay public schools. Green Bay East High School.
it is just kind of remarkable to see it as like it's a high school stadium.
Yeah, and it still is. That's where the
Yeah.
East still plays at City Stadium, like the original City Stadium. And I just
Yes.
like, and if you didn't know any better, like you can attest. Had I been able to turn left down the original street, it's just in a neighborhood now. Like
Yeah.
it's by Joanne's Park, by the water park in Green Bay. It's right next to the high school, and it's just by any other regular thoroughfare in Green Bay. And it has the sign that says City Stadium in the old blue and gold lettering, and that's really all it is. Um, but yeah, it there's just little pieces of history dotted around Green Bay pertaining to this franchise, and it's quite neat.
Yeah. Very neat.
One last thing on OTAs, two more things before we wrap up. Lucas Van Ness suffered a broken thumb during OTAs. Twitter had fun with this. A quote from Matt LaFleur: "Just the tip." So we'll leave it at that. So he should be fine coming into training camp. And then Tucker Craft tore his pectoral muscle when bench pressing during the offseason, and he'll be sidelined until at least start of training camp recovering from surgery. I'm gonna I'm gonna like shiver with grossness. Kraft said he felt the muscle tear from the bone and his arm is in a sling. Oh my fucking god.
He called it
Oh.
he said he was speed pressing, which sounds awful.
How about
That's
the man from south, north, south, north,
South Dakota.
South Dakota? Just chill out, dog. Just chill out, buddy. We don't need to do
I think it's South Dakota.
speed pressing. I think it is South Dakota. He's a jackrabbit, not a
Yeah,
bison.
he's a jackrabbit.
Not a bison. So, a couple injuries. Hopefully, they're all good to go by training camp and can start the season with the team week one in Sao Paulo. But that does it for this episode of Talk of the Tundra. Thank you guys for listening. As a reminder, go check out the gspn.info because that will bring you to the Substack where you can subscribe to our premium feed where you can get this feed with no ad, or this pod rather, and all of our other GSPN pods with no ads and our other exclusive content, including trivia, the weekly extra pod we pull out for all the subscribers, and written articles and things like that. So be sure to go check that out and subscribe if you'd like. We would obviously really appreciate it. If not, that's just fine too. You can continue finding all of our regularly scheduled pods in your podcast feeds, like Eurostep as Ty and Rohan continue to talk about the Bucks as they enter the offseason. I believe they had a pod come out um, earlier this week. Yeah, they talked about chasing Derek
Yes.
Jones Jr. and how the Bucks can add athletic wing players. Um, Obviously, went in six as well with Jordan and Adam. Cruising for a Bruising, they'll be putting out a fresh, hot new pod in your podcast feeds right now as you're listening to this, as the Brewers took 3-4 from the Cubs, and Craig Counsell's return to American Family Field. Not his return to Milwaukee, since that Benedict Arnold still commutes from Whitefish Bay to Chicago every day, which is batshit. Um, so go check out Cruising for a Bruising because the Brewers are top of the division as May ends today. Again, as you're listening to this. And then check out Make Time for This, the pop culture movie TV podcast that Adam and Andrew do as well. Their most recent episode dropped a couple weeks ago talking about the frenetic exuberance and energy of challengers. Uh, and then it's plus a revealing look into Andrew's mind and life, which also had to do with challengers. The thruple tennis movie I have yet to see. But regardless of all that, thank you all for listening. Like I said, go check out the Substack. We got a bunch of content out there for you guys already. A couple of articles from Jordan, a couple articles from Ty. Even if you don't subscribe monetarily, you can subscribe to receive our emails. You'll get emails every time these pods go live, as well as any videos we put out that have exclusive previews. You'll get emails for those as well, and you'll be able to check it out. So either if you subscribe or don't, it doesn't matter to us. All that matters to us is your support, everlasting. We appreciate it anyways. And Jordan, I appreciate you, and thank you for potting with me.
Hey, I appreciate you and thank you.